Welcome to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be going over how to create this web design with animation using HTML and CSS. So in this design, you can see that we have a logo on the top left, a pre-order button on the top right. We have our title that fades in and out. And we also have the Explore the Gallery button on the lower left of the title. And you can see also that there is an animation basically spawning from the top of the page and just disappearing as it gets towards the bottom of the page. So let's just get started. So let's take a look at the files we're going to be working with. We have an index.html and the CSS file called styles. And then we have a couple of our images that we're going to use as the background and all the other little files that create this design. Okay, so I'm going to load this up into my Visual Studio's editor. Okay, we're going to start off with this basic structure here that I have for the index.html. And if we take a little peek into the styles.css, you can see that we also have something outlined here. So if we go back into the index file, this little line of code here is what connects the CSS file to our HTML file. So let's create a hero tag by typing .hero, and we're going to also create a reference in the CSS file. Okay, so in these brackets, let's type in width, and let's make that 100%. Then we're going to type in height, and we're going to make this 100 VH. Now let's create the background image, and I'm going to type in URL, and then within this URL, we're going to just type in the location of this file. It's in the root of my folder, so I'm just going to type in /file name. So now let's type in background size. That's going to be cover, and then background position is going to be top. And then the position is going to be relative, and the overflow is going to be hidden. Now let's head over to our index file and create a new div, and we're going to call this the nav bar. And in this nav bar, we're going to have an image, and let's call that logo.png. And then we're going to also add the class, and that's going to equal logo. Now let's also add a button, and then the type is going to be button, and that button's going to say pre-order. So now if you take a look at the web page, we should see a logo, and we should also see the background design, and you can see that the logo is a little too big. So let's go into our CSS file, and we're going to create the reference to logo, and we're going to type in width to 100 pixels, and we're going to also type in cursor to pointer. And so now let's create some space there. So nav bar. And now within here, we're going to type in width equals 85%. Height is going to be equal to 15%. Margin is going to be auto. Display is going to be flex. Align items is going to be center. And justify content should be space between. Now you should see the logo on the top left there and the pre-order button on the top right. So now let's create our reference to our button. So let's type in button. And the color is going to be this code here. The padding is going to be 10 pixels by 25 pixels. And the background is going to be transparent. The border is going to be 3 pixels solid in this color code here. And the border radius should be 20 pixels. The outline should be none, and the cursor is pointer. Okay, so now our button is looking great. Now let's go back into our index file and let's create a new div. Let's call this class content. And then we're going to create a small heading here. I'm going to name mine Burning Alive Studios. And now let's create our H1 tag. And this one should be a little bigger. It's going to say from the ashes. Okay. And actually, let's do a little break here. So we're going to do from the, then break ashes. So let's make this look a bit better. Let's head over to the CSS file and add content. For the color, we're going to add this value here. For the position, we're going to add absolute. For top, we're going to have it go to 50%. And left is going to be 8%. Transform is going to be translate Y and negative 50%. And Z index is going to be 2. Let's also set up the H1 tag. So for font size, let's do 80 pixels. For margin, do 10 pixels, 0, then 30 pixels. For line height, we're going to put in 80 pixels. That's about it. Okay, now let's go back to the index file. So now let's also add this button. So let's add button. The type is going to be button. And the name of the button is going to be Explore the Gallery. And then let's just add the closing button here. So keep in mind that if you're following along and it doesn't look exactly like mine, just remember to add the closing divs at the bottom. Every open div should have a closing div. So just keep that in mind and remember to hit save every time you make a change. That way you can see it reflect on the page. Okay, let's hit save. And now we should see the button reflect. Let's add a sidebar. So let's add sidebar. And let's jump back into the styles sheet and we're going to add sidebar. And for the width, we're going to add 50 pixels. For height, 100 VH. For background, we're going to do linear gradient. And I'm going to add these two colors here. For position, we're going to add absolute. And it's going to be on the right at 0 and the top at 0. So let's go back into our index file and create our menu. So we're going to do an image source, and that's going to be menu.png, and we're going to create the class menu. And now we can see it's coming along. So let's go back into our CSS and add the menu. And then here we're going to add display. It's going to be block, and width is going to be 25 pixels. Margin is going to be 40 pixels, and auto, then 0. And then the cursor is going to be pointer. And now if you take a look at the menu icon, you can see it on the top right there. Now hopping back into the index file, let's create another div. We're going to call this one social links, and we're going to add some image sources here. So the first one's going to be fb.png. The second one's going to be ig.png. And the third one's going to be tw.png. Now that we added all the images, you should see on the right hand side of the page, all three icons. They're a little big now, but we will change that in a bit. So for now, we're going to create another div and we're going to call this one useful links. And this is where we're going to add our share and info buttons. So image source, share.png and image source info.png. So now let's go back into our CSS and we're just going to add a reference to both of these. So for this one, we're going to add social links image and the useful links image all in one bracket here. And we're going to set the width to 25 pixels, the margin to 5 pixel auto, and the cursor to pointer. But since we want these in different positions, we're going to have to break them down into their own bracket. So let's go with social links. And then now we're going to add the width to 50 pixels, the text align to center, position to absolute, top to 50%, and transform to translate -50%. And now let's do our useful links. And we're going to set the width to 50 pixels, the text align to center, position to absolute, and the bottom to 30 pixels. Okay, so it's looking good. Let's go back into the index file, and now we're just going to add the animations for the ashes that fall from the top. So let's create a div outside of the sidebar, and we're going to call this one ashes, and we're going to add the image source ash.png, and that's going to be the first image that we add. So we're going to have about 11 of these, so let's just copy and paste all of them. Now let's head over to our CSS file and add the ashes image. And we're going to have the width to 500 pixels. And now let's create the positioning for it. So ashes, the width is going to be 100%. Display is going to be flex. Align items are going to be center. Justify content, space around. And position is going to be absolute. and the top is going to be -70 so that it can start all the way on top. Now you should see all the images all equally spaced on the top. And now we're going to move on to the animation part. Let's go back into Ashes and add animation Ashes 7S linear infinite. And we're referring to an animation sequence that we're about to write. So at the bottom here, let's write at keyframes Ashes, and we're going to put in 0% and create a bracket. And inside this bracket, we're going to type in transform translate y is 0, and the opacity for this is going to be 0. So now let's copy this 3 more times, and we're going to remove the transform translate y on both of these in the middle here, and we're going to change the opacity to 1 on both of them as well. We're also going to change the percentages on the middle here to 50%, and the next one to 70%, and the last one to 100%. Let's also change translate y to 80VH. So now you should see the ashes falling from the top of the screen all the way to the bottom and fading out. But it looks like they're all doing this at the same time. So let's just change the animation speed for each one. So at the bottom here, we're going to type in ashes image, and this is going to select the first image that we have in the HTML, and let's write animation dash delay is 5 seconds. And now from here on, we're just going to copy this about 10 more times and just change the seconds and the reference to the image. So this is the speed I set mine up for. You can do yours to however you like. Now we're going to just transition into making the H1 title here float to the right. And so what we're going to do is we're going to head all the way up to our H1 class again, and we're just going to add animation H1 7 seconds linear infinite. So we can copy the ashes positioning and paste it all the way at the bottom here, and just change the name to H1. And we can also copy the keyframes right here and paste it at the bottom, and change the keyframes from ashes to H1. I changed the translate y to translate x, and for both of them, and I also changed the speed at the 100% to 10VH. And that's it. There we have it. We've recreated this design, and now you have a better idea of how this comes together. If you like content like this, then please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.